When we talk about conservation, most people think of animals rather than plants. Yet it is predicted that within the next 30 years, nearly 6,000 plant species will be on the verge of extinction. As in the animal kingdom, it is mankind who poses the biggest threat. Wild orchids, for instance, have long been a collector's item, fueling a demand far greater than nature can afford. Susan Yu investigates the blooming business of orchid smuggling and what some are trying to do to stop it.
The rare beauty of wild orchids has bewitched and enchanted collectors for hundreds of years. But as the most sought-after plant in the horticultural world, today their very allure is threatening their future. What is the attraction of these orchids?
Well, we call these, Yanglan, foreign orchids. There has been more than 2,000 years of history. They are highly prized as elegant, not just within China, but also among the Chinese cultural areas like Taiwan and Japan and Korea. Singapore as well, of course, in Hong Kong as well.
Dr. Lawrence Chow is a flora researcher involved in conservation projects in Hong Kong and China.
This is Dendrobium fibreatum, which is native to southwestern part of China, as well as neighboring countries such as Nepal and Laos. They do not occur naturally in Hong Kong. The wild population has become, endangered because of these. You can see these flowers so attractive, so they have been overexploited in their natural range.
There are at least 18,000 species of wild orchids on record. An international convention has listed all of them as rare or endangered to stop them from being exploited. In reality, that means little.
Traders will just go to the mountain areas where the wild populations are and just strip off almost everything. So the more commonly known Chinese cymbidiums, gualan, has been heavily deprived of in the southern provinces of Guangdong, Guangxi, Fujian, and Guizhou.
Orchids are collected and sold for decorative and medicinal purposes. On the black market, wild orchids sell for roughly $25 per plant, but rare species have fetched up to $7,000. It's become a healthy source of income for the impoverished villagers who collect them.
Here is an example. Like this is Dendrobium lotijaxii. Actually, it is a traditional medicinal herb. That's why the local villagers in mainland China, they will strip them off from the wild for the trader. One clump of this with flowers, it costs more than $1,000.
In an attempt to stamp out this lucrative trade, Hong Kong authorities have confiscated thousands of orchid plants. Most are passed to this Flora Conservation Center for safekeeping.
Here you may say most of them are slipper orchids native to mainland China. And then when they are in flower, then I will identify what are they. Up to now, there are 16 species are native to China.
The Asian lady slipper orchid can also be found in neighboring Vietnam. It is illegal to remove any slipper orchid from its habitat, but flower traders rarely heed this law, as we discovered in the southern highlands. Dalat is known as Vietnam's flower capital. Gardening has long fueled the local economy. But these days, especially for orchid fans, there's more on offer than your typical garden variety. Long Thi Van has been running the stand in Dalat's flower market for 8 years. She shows us her selection of rare and endangered orchids. The slipper orchids aren't on display. They're hidden at her home nearby. After a short time and paying $6, we easily become the owner of 4 slipper orchid plants.
này là cái bông nó tàn trên thôi. Cái anh thông dịch
We
đâu
later
vậy?
surrender them to a government officer.
It's a fact of life that it's ongoing every minute that we are standing here and we are talking.
Wen Mingtong heads the World Conservation Union in Hanoi. His group surveyed Halong Bay's unspoiled flora and recently published a book on their findings. The World Heritage Site is home to a host of rare and unique plant species, including, for now at least, the endangered yellow slipper orchid, found on the vertical cliffs of the bay.
This is also one of the major attention and content of one of the resolutions by IUCN General Assembly passed during the year of 2000 to combat illegal trade in endangered species, not only in Vietnam but in this area in general. Vietnam is not only a market but a place of source for other markets.
The Global Environment Fund is trying to help Vietnam fight unscrupulous botanical collectors from plundering its natural resources. It's lending financial support to the government in a $4 million project to preserve genetic stocks of Vietnamese plants. Back in Hong Kong, a similar campaign is taking place.
We would like to find out some solution to save these highly threatened plants.
In an effort to restore wild populations of rare orchids back to their habitat, scientists are using tissue culture to propagate certain species.
We would like to use the tissue culture technique to have a mass propagation of these highly threatened plants. Up to now, we got a quite satisfactory result for more than 40 species. And then the ultimate target for us is we would like to transplant these seedlings back to the wild to restore their wild populations.
Cultivating threatened species of orchids like these is one issue. The other is knowing how to do it properly and successfully, especially in places like China. It's also known in the industry that private institutions aren't that willing to share the information for reasons of profit. Some countries allow the import or export of rare or endangered species if the intention is to propagate the orchids to secure the population's future in the wild. But even these conservation measures are being flouted, with some botanists breeding them instead for commercial purposes. As authorities try to stem the trade, orchid collectors continue their unorthodox fieldwork, seduced not just by the beauty of the harvest, but also the blossoming financial rewards.